Good afternoon, everyone. This is Chair Clayton speaking. Before we get started, can I ask that anyone who does not need to be on the screen, and I'm sorry, it's just really difficult with all the people on the screen to try and kind of see what's what. If someone doesn't have to be on the screen, if they don't have a speaking role, if they're not speaking right now, can we have them in the viewing gallery as a viewer and not an actual panelist, just as a participant? If that's possible. And I don't know, maybe everyone on here needs to be on here.
This is the chat moderator, Chair, just letting you know that we are live on Facebook.
Okay, thank you. So this is Chair Clayton again. Is everyone on the screen have a role? Because it looks like we only have 3 commissioners on right now and my screen is full. So I think Attorney Cannon doesn't need to be in right now.
I just don't know how to take myself out, though.
No, it would not be you. It would be one of the people who's managing the meeting.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, that's not you. I'm not sure. Mr. Lewis needs to be in now. Attorney Reed, I don't know. Bethany James, you know, she is a Tiara Yakini. Is that one of our, who's Tiara Yakini? Oh, hi Bethany.
It's Tiara. She is the backup to Sean.
Okay, is that for the slide presentation?
Yes.
Okay, so we won't have that until a little later on, so maybe Tiara can come back in at that time. Annette Blau. Does anyone know who Annette is?
This is the chat moderator. Annette is the captioner.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and then recorder is?
The recorder is going to record the session.
Okay, does recorder need to be actually in the meeting to record? Can they be a participant, not a panelist? It's 4:59. Can someone let me know that? This is Chair Clayton again. Who's the meeting manager?
Chair Clayton, that would be me, Kim.
Okay, does the recorder need to be in the meeting to actually record to this?
Yes.
She has to be a panelist?
Yes.
Okay. And also I'd asked about, can Anthony Lewis, can we bring him over when it's time for him to do the presentation? We don't need to have Anthony Lewis on screen now, do we? Nor David Cannon. They can come on when it's actually time for them to speak. I'm just trying to
be totally out of the meeting if they.
Right. But they will be able to see the meeting if they were as a participant. Participants can see the meeting. If they're moved over to participant, they'll be able to see it, and then they'll be brought over when it's time for them to speak.
Chat moderator, are you able to do that? Can you move them back to participant and bring them back to?
And also, if I can be made a co-host, please. Whoever is hosting the meeting. Good afternoon, commissioners who have joined. We'll be getting started in just a moment as soon as I get this set. And who's the host of the meeting? This is Chair Clayton again.
The host is the live streamer.
Can the live streamer make me a co-host, please? Are there any other co-hosts?
I believe the recorder is a co-host and the chat moderator is a co-host.
Okay, and who's our live streamer? I see one.
Jeanette Johnson from the Communications Division.
Okay, Jeanette, this is Chair Clayton. Can you please make me a co-host?
JJ has indicated you already are a co-host, Chair Clayton.
I am, okay. All right, so we just haven't, okay, there it is, got it. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, who is calling off the meeting and letting us know when we're ready to go? Are we all set for me to gavel in the meeting, all our live streams and what have you already?
This is the chat moderator. We are live.
Okay, all right. Thank you, okay. Good evening. I now call to order the meeting of the Michigan Civil Rights Commission. Today is Monday, September 21st, 2021. The time is 5:02 p.m. and this meeting is being held utilizing the Zoom web conferencing platform as well as live streaming through Facebook and YouTube. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Clayton,
Present.
Commissioner Combs. You're muted, Commissioner Combs. Commissioner Corvo. Commissioner Elasan.
Present.
Commissioner Gasco Bentley.
Present.
Commissioner Kazaraju. Commissioner Laura.
Present.
Commissioner Roberson.
Present.
We have 6 commissioners. We do have a quorum.
Thank you. And Bishop Combs, are you able to let us know you are here?
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, the tech team came and got it done.
All right, thank you. So we'll note Commissioner Combs is present as well. The next agenda item is approval of the agenda. May I have a motion to amend the agenda to move commission business item 8 to right after public comment?
So moved.
The motion was made by Commissioner Combs. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Seconded by Commissioner Lara. So motion is, may I now have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Move for the adoption.
Moved by Commissioner Combs. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have support from Commissioner Roberson. All in favor of the motion to approve, say aye.
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 Thank you. The motion carries unanimously to approve the agenda as amended. And please let the record reflect, we have been joined by Commissioner Kasaraju. And thank you for the motion to adjust the agenda. Some of our presenters have to leave early and we want to be respectful of their time, so we'll handle commission matters earlier in the meeting. Good evening again, everyone, and welcome. I don't believe he's watching, but I do want to congratulate former Director James White. He was approved unanimously by the Board of Police Commissioners and the Detroit City Council as a permanent police chief for the city of Detroit. So just want to tell him congratulations. And I think it's the 4th time, it could be the 5th time, I'm not sure, but we just want to welcome back Sylvia Elliott to the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. She is serving in a consultant capacity and she is also serving as a clerk for our meeting this evening. So Sylvia, welcome back. If you leave again, we're not doing another dinner and all that, but we are so glad to have you back working with us again. So welcome back.
Thank you very much.
Welcome back, Sylvia. And I am also very, very pleased to say that we are joined via Zoom. They are participants watching our meeting, but we do have representatives from the Wayne State Black Student Union who are watching our meeting. And I just want to say hi to everyone. And I look forward to working with you in my day job that actually pays the bills. So our next item is a public comment protocol, and that will be read for us by our new Deputy Director, Kimberly Woolridge.
Thank you, Chair Clayton. Today's meeting will be recorded. All speakers must identify themselves by name first before speaking. If you require closed captioning and you are using Zoom, you can turn on captions by clicking the CC icon at the lower right part of your screen. The commission has already received written public comments and will only be accepting verbal public comments during the meeting. If attendees wish to speak during the public comment portion of the agenda, you must sign up to do so within the next 10 minutes by typing your name and city you reside in the chat box located at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If unable to type in the chat box, please click on the icon labeled participants to raise and lower your hand at the lower center of the screen when it's time for public comment. Staff will call on attendees in the order in which we receive their request to speak, whether via chat or raised hand. MDCR staff will first verbally identify public comment speakers by their name, and then the individual will be unmuted to speak and will be muted after their designated time frame for speaking ends. The public comment time frame for speaking will be 2 minutes. There will be a visual timer on screen showing the following colors: green for 2 minutes, yellow for 30 seconds, and red for stop. The timekeeper will verbally remind each speaker when 30 seconds remains. For attendees who are calling in by phone to provide public comments, callers must enter #2 on their mobile device to raise and lower hands. MDCR staff will identify callers who wish to speak by the last 4 digits of their phone number. Please also be aware that MDCR staff will verbally warn any speakers only once if they use inappropriate, inflammatory, or disrespectful language. If use of that language continues, the speaker will be muted. For those who are joining us via live, the MDCR Facebook page or the MDCR YouTube accounts, there will be an approximate 20-second delay between the actual Zoom meeting. Individuals who wish to deliver verbal public comments can only do so if they are attending via Zoom or by phone. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Deputy Director Woolridge. And just to reiterate, if you would like to speak during public comment, please leave your hand raised until that time. Please do not lower your hand until after you've been recognized and you have spoken. Next item is the adoption of the consent agenda. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move for the adoption.
The motion has been made by Commissioner Combs. Is there a second to adopt the consent agenda?
Second.
Support.
The motion has been supported by Commissioner Lara. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. Seeing none opposed, the consent agenda has been adopted. Next item is the approval of the minutes from the meeting of July 26, 2021. May I have a motion to approve the minutes as submitted?
Motion.
Motion has been made by Commissioner Gaskell Bentley. Is there a second?
Support.
The motion has been supported and seconded by Commissioner Combs. Is there any discussion or revisions to the minutes? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes as submitted, say aye.
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 Thank you, none opposed. The minutes have been approved. We are now ready to begin public comment. As a reminder, we'll be taking comments in the order in which they are received, meaning when someone's hand was raised or they put into the chat that they would like to participate in public comment. We have about 7 more minutes that public comment will be left open, and we will begin now. How many hands do we have raised, or how many people do we have in the chat right now? And is that Attorney Trevino who's handling public comment for us this afternoon?
Thank you, Commissioner Clayton. Yes, we have 1 in the chat.
Okay,
Mr. Keith Van Popperin of Jackson, Michigan.
Okay, and there are no hands raised for public comment, correct, at this time?
That is correct.
Okay, So again, if anyone wants to participate in public comment, please raise your hand so that we can bring you over. And I'm sorry, again, Attorney Trevino, it's what is the gentleman's name from Jackson? I think you said Jackson.
Yes, Keith Van Popperen of Jackson, Michigan.
Okay. Is he ready?
I'm ready.
Good afternoon, Mr. Van Popperen. You have 2 minutes. You may begin.
Thank you. It's wonderful to see all you people gather to help the communities. I am trying to work with the State Civil Rights Commission on a complaint that started in February of 2020. I have communicated with your deputy director about this. There seems to be a misunderstanding. I'm a handicapped person with a service dog, and they keep wanting to focus on the service dog area rather than the treatment I received as an individual. So I will probably be communicating with members of this board, and I'm working with Kim, just started again on Friday after 6-month break. So you will see my name again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Van Popperen. We appreciate your calling in for public comment. Who do we have next?
Madam Chair, we do not have anyone at this moment for public comment.
Okay, I'm going to leave it open just a little bit longer because we did get to it a little earlier than we normally would have. So we'll just leave it open for a few more minutes. We have about 4 more minutes that we will leave it open. So the next item is commission business, which we adjusted our agenda. So the first item is our chair's report. If we can go on and bring over Dr. Rice from the Michigan State Board of Education. He'll be speaking next. Okay. Chair's report under commission business. It was actually 1 year ago at our September 2020 meeting that the commission introduced and approved our Education Equity in Michigan report. This report was a culmination of a series of public hearings and a year-long examination of disparities in K-12 education in Michigan. From May 2018 through the end of March 2019, the commission held public hearings around the state and heard from dozens of subject matter experts, school administrators, teachers, parents, and students on the ways Michigan is falling short in its obligation to effectively educate all of its children. At the end, the Education Equity in Michigan report made 10 recommendations for action. The very dedicated Michigan Department of Civil Rights Council on Government and Education Equity Inclusion, some who are joining us via Zoom this evening, reviewed and worked on actualizing these recommendations. Additionally, we shared a wonderful partnership with the Michigan Department of Education in working on the actualization of these recommendations. I am very pleased to report that 1 year later, and 2 directors later, that 6 of those 10 recommendations are ready for action. This includes exceptionally well-researched and written MDC, our Education Equity Resource Guide that we'll hear about later. But first, we will hear from Dr. Michael Rice, State Superintendent of Public Education. Before Dr. Rice begins to speak, I'm going to ask one more time, do we have anyone who has raised their hand or put in the chat that they want to do public comment? Attorney Trevino, do we have anyone?
Madam Chair, we do not have anyone at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. We are going to close out public comment at this time. And we are going to turn, let me start. The 2 recommendations that we had that are actually already being managed and handled by the Department of Education. The first one is to ensure that all data collected by state and county government entities be disaggregated by race and ethnicity, and also support a well-resourced and quality teacher training program through universities and colleges, encouraging diversity in its teaching roles and student enrollment. Dr. Rice, you too were here with us a year ago when we did our Education Equity Report, and we thank you for joining us again this evening, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairwoman Clayton. Good evening to you and to members of the commission, to Director Johnson, department staff. I thank you for the opportunity to address you briefly this evening. I'm so appreciative of the work of the commission and the Department of Civil Rights. As I've shared before, while our work with the state board and in the Michigan Department of Education is not identical by any means to your work, The overlap is very significant and very much appreciated and bears mentioning. Our top 10 state strategic education plan approved in August of 2020, just a month before your report came out by the State Board of Education with input from stakeholders across the state, included 8 goals. Of these 8, 5 of the goals are among the findings in your September 2020 Education Equity in Michigan report. Among your report's findings are a concern about the lack of universality of preschool, the need to improve literacy, the need to improve health, safety, and wellness, the need to address teacher shortages, and the need to address issues of adequacy and equity in school funding. Goals 1, 2, 3, 7, and 8 of the state's top 10 state strategic education plan. I've been asked to speak this evening, as you mentioned, Chair, about 2 commonalities in our work: the teacher diversity shortage and the importance of disaggregation of data for the analysis of gaps among groups of students. We have in Michigan not simply shortages of individuals who wish to teach in all major areas, but also a shortage in teacher diversity. Specifically, our most recent data show that our teachers are 90.4% white, but our students are 65.6% white. Stated another way, our teachers of color, Black, African American, Latino/Hispanic, Asian American/Pacific Islander, Native American, and 2 or more races, represent approximately 10% of our teachers. Our students of color represent roughly 36% of our students. In other words, the percentage of students of color, 36%, is almost 4 times the percentage of teachers of color, 10%. So some might ask, should we care? Teachers are teachers. What difference does it make if we have diversity in the profession? Well, we should care for at least 3 broad reasons. First, research says that we should care. Research from Johns Hopkins University just 3 years ago indicates that Black children who have at least 1 Black teacher by 3rd grade are more likely to graduate from high school and 13% more likely to enroll in college. And those who have at least 2 Black teachers by 3rd grade are more likely to graduate from high school and 32% more likely to enroll in college. It matters from a student achievement perspective, from a research perspective, to have teachers like oneself, not exclusively, but importantly in the mix. Second, the presence of a diverse teaching staff helps make the point that our students coming up have the capacity, irrespective of race, ethnicity, or other immutable elements of our backgrounds, to become teachers. It's hard to be what you can't see, and so much easier to imagine yourself in a profession if you see someone else like you there already. To be sure, there are always trailblazers, people like W.E.B. Du Bois, who became the first Black to graduate with a PhD from Harvard. It's simply easier, not easy, but easier to follow a blazed trail than to have to blaze the trail yourself. And the third reason we should care for all children is there is a value to experiencing diversity in the teacher ranks. We're preparing our children for an increasingly diverse world. We should begin to do so now so that our children are more comfortable around diversity than many of us are. I vividly remember my first 3 teachers of color, Ms. Miller, Ms. Robinson, and Mr. Randolph. They each made a huge impression on me as a kid growing up in Dayton, Ohio, back in the day. Ms. Robinson, may she rest in peace, became a lifelong friend until she passed several months ago. To help increase diversity in the teacher ranks, the Michigan Department of Education has put out guidance and grants for districts to begin grow your own programs for students who aspire to become teachers. The department has also put out guidance and support for districts to begin grow your own programs for support staff members who aspire to become teachers. In the coming months, we'll be issuing additional guidance and small grants associated with this effort. Each of these pools, our students and our support staff, are more diverse than are our teachers. If we recruit and develop individuals to become teachers from these broad pools, all else being equal, we will become more diverse in our teaching profession. Additionally, MDE has approved 2 applications for waivers to establish alternative teacher certification pathways, in part to help develop diversity in the teaching workforce among support staff members. These entities are Detroit Public Schools Community District, number 1, and number 2, New Paradigm for Education. Finally, we have a significant and robust Proud Michigan Educator campaign, which has begun in recent years to drumbeat around diversity as well. I've also been asked, Chair and members of the commission, to speak briefly on the importance of disaggregation of student data to help raise consciousness around gaps as a prelude to addressing the gaps. Without belaboring the point, our top 10 state strategic education plan includes a commitment to disaggregating data that is often available publicly online at My School Data. Moreover, we have extended our commitment to including this disaggregation when we do public reports at our board meetings on different state strategic education plan goals, the 8 goals that I just shared with you a little while ago. While the disaggregation of data in and of itself is not sufficient to improve educational outcomes, it is clearly a necessary part of the process. Thank you again, Madam Chair, members of the commission, Director Johnson. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time. And I hope I was true to my word by staying within my 5 to 8 minutes. Thank you.
You were excellent, Dr. Rice. Thank you. Can we let the record reflect that we have been joined by Commissioner Corvo? Good afternoon, Commissioner Corvo. Do we have any questions or comments from any commissioners for Commissioner Roberson? Yes.
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you, Dr. Rice, for presenting on this issue. In my, as Stacy put, as the Madam Chair puts it, in my day job at Focus Hope, we often see the importance of having Black teachers in our early Head Start and Head Start program. And I can tell you how influential those teachers, particularly Black men, are with Black boys who are coming into our Head Start program. So I am on board with what you all are doing, and I certainly will take back to our staff at Focus Hope some of the effort you all are making to make the teaching staffs more diverse, not only in places like Focus Hope, but throughout DPS and surrounding school districts. So thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Dr. Rice, again, you know I've told you this before. I'm going to say it publicly. I love listening to you speak. You are just a wealth of information, and you surprised me. I didn't know what you were going to actually say today, but the data and statistics that you shared with us, thank you very much. Is there any way that we can get your comments? I know we'll have the transcript from the Zoom meeting, but is there any way you can get your comments in writing, or some, is that possible? Because there were some very good data points that you had in there, and the waivers that you were presenting for Detroit Public Schools and for New Paradigm. I just think that's good information for us to be able to have as well, especially I'm sure my fellow members on our Education Equity Subcommittee will be interested in that information along with the other commissioners.
I'll send it to you and Director Johnson before the meeting's over.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And
I have a question.
So, oh yes, Commissioner Holmes, yes.
Yes, Dr. Rice, you probably mentioned it in your presentation, but can you speak with any specificity to the highlights in your strategic plan to incentivize the goal of reaching a certain, shall we say, metric and or number of minority teachers that you're trying to reach? What exactly would you use as examples as to how you are strategically incentivizing the universe of recruitment to bring minority teachers into the system? And what is the goal? What do you see as a short-term and long-term goal of the strategy?
Okay, so a few things. First of all, we have very few dollars. That's lamentable, but true. We would love to have more money with which to incentivize. We were recently granted $1.5 million by the state legislature to continue grow your own efforts We recently, a year ago, put out $1.1 million worth of grants for additional grow your own efforts. So the initial grow your own efforts were grow your own efforts for students. These are grow your own efforts for support staff. We are going to be drumbeating around a larger ask, a substantially larger ask, because as you would certainly agree, I believe, Commissioner Combs, there needs to be more to bend behavior than that. We use the power of exhortation, the power of resource, the power of guidance. I recently spoke to several hundred superintendents at the MASA, MAISA, and Middle Cities meetings in Traverse City, drumbeating around and making the same points about the value of diversity. Your children should see themselves in their teachers. They don't have to see themselves in every teacher, but they shouldn't never see themselves. It shouldn't be coincidental that they see themselves in their teachers. We had one individual share that he didn't see his first teacher of color until graduate school. That's terrible. That's not acceptable. Not in the state of Michigan, not in 2021, never. And so some of it is the power of exhortation. There are huge dollars in our local school districts from federal pandemic relief packages, CARES Act, CRESA, and ARP. And we are encouraging our local school district superintendents and boards to put money into recruitment, to put money into retention, to put money into the building of diverse teacher workforces, including but not limited to grow your own for support staff and grow your own for teachers.
So what you say, Dr. Wright, that you all have done your analytics on exactly what that ask would be in terms of the necessary amount of funding for you to reach a certain goal that the Michigan Department of Education has set for increasing the number of minority professionals in the classroom.
So let me say this, Commissioner, there are 830 local school districts in the state.
Mm-hmm.
And each of those has its independent reflection on the value of diversity and an individual capacity to recruit, to address greater diversity. I can tell you that when I pulsed with the superintendents at MASA, many said that diversity was important to them, and yet fewer said that teacher diversity was important to them. Fewer still said that they were working on this. Now, I will tell you that I was encouraged by what I saw as a percentage of hands raised, but by no means do I think that 830 local school districts are working on the goal of diversity. I would say a few hundred are working on the goal of teacher diversity. And I'm encouraged by that. I'm encouraged by the fact that we have many communities with substantial diversity from which to draw and from which to drumbeat and recruit for the teaching profession, not simply among support staff members and students, but among community members who don't have a relationship with the district, but who might want to become teachers nonetheless. So I'm encouraged that there is now a greater interest in diversity in the teacher workforce than I've ever seen in my career. And my career goes back almost 4 decades. Do I think we're where we need to be? No, sir. The other thing that I want to make sure that is clear is we have no defined numeric goal, not only for diversity in the teacher profession, but for any of our others. They're all directional. We want to improve upon, but we don't have any defined metrics, because what we don't want people to do is to say, well, we've arrived. We've increased the percentage of teachers from 10% to 15%, 15 to 20, 20 to 25, and we should be comfortable with that. We're trying to make progress on all of these, and I can tell you that soon I'll be sharing more on what that progress has been in a different venue.
Well, Dr. Rice, that's peculiar, because you gave an extraordinary presentation on the number of minorities in the system versus the 10% number of those particular teachers that are in the universe of teaching. and the need to close the gap. And I would think that if you're going to analyze and use measurements to reach that metric so that you can do the comparisons, you would likewise then set a goal to close the gap. I mean, you would need to set some kind of goal to close the gap, because that in fact is what you're trying to do. The other thing is, and I'll rest my comments after this, is I heard from the members of the Senate that there's $5 billion in the rainy day fund, the surplus in the state budget because of COVID-19 and other dollars, with a B, the largest fund balance in the history of the state of Michigan. It would appear to me that in as much as those are tax dollars, that we would be in the Michigan Department of Education pressing all entities that are that understand the importance and significance of education, public education, to do what they can to put this particular piece of the puzzle that you're presenting to us as a priority in the strategic plan of education, and including minorities in quality education and closing what they talk about inequity in education. So what are your thoughts on that? Is that in there? Do they know there's $5 billion sitting up in the state bank waiting to be accessed for something as significant as education, which our understanding is one of the number one, if not the number one civil rights issue of the day?
So Commissioner, I can't speak to the specific balance sheet number. What I can say is that there is more federal funding that's not been allocated. And I believe more state funding as well. Specific to the federal money, there's quite a bit of unallocated federal money. We do believe that more needs to be done on the teacher shortage. We do believe that more needs to be appropriated for this issue. And so succinctly, I would simply say amen.
Thank you.
I rest my comments.
Thank you, Bishop Combs. And Dr. Rice, I want to thank you again. Like I said, the data that you provided us was in support of what we as a commission heard throughout 18 and 19 regarding the need for students to actually see teachers that look like them. We heard that not only from parents, we heard that from students. We also heard it from educators of color who said that there needed to be more of them teaching students. So thank you for providing us with some of the data to support what was in our own report. And also, I want to thank you for when you read our recommendations and you saw that the disaggregation of the data was one of the things that we were calling for, and for letting us know, say, hey, we already have that. So how can we work together? So just want to thank you very much for that. Thank you for joining us this evening. Were there any other commissioners who had comments or questions for Dr. Rice? Yes, Commissioner Kasaraju.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rice. Very informative. And I just want to piggyback on Commissioner Combs' question regarding the minority equipment. I'm Asian American, and we are supposed to be statistically the fastest growing ethnic minority in the US. And typically Asians don't seek out teaching as a profession, largely because they tend to traverse into other STEM fields. But as little children, I see many kids, Asian kids, love being teachers, and somewhere along the way that interest seems to fade off. And I was wondering if we can use, I know we're looking for budget from the state, but also there is the social cultural aspect of many ethnic groups that get together in religious settings. And we could pitch at these very informal and also some formal occasions what it means to be a teacher and why it is important to be a teacher, that it's one of the noblest professions. I think between healthcare workers and teachers, it would be very hard to pick a more nobler profession. But I think people just don't see the value of being a teacher. It's not as glamorous. Certainly the hardships that teachers face during COVID and with the gun violence epidemic, it's really not on anybody's mind as a first choice career. But I feel like we also need to go into these ethnic communities, whether it's Black, Brown, Hispanic, Asian, and talk to them why teaching is indeed still a viable profession, a fulfilling profession, and why it is actually important for our children to have the representation. And the 3 points that you listed are spot on. I don't think anyone needs to look beyond the 3 and the statistics that you presented to at least give it a consideration. Like we say, if it is not even a consideration, how will they choose? And I don't know how many school career days and such that we can go in and make such pitches in local school district and high school when children are picking schools and colleges, to have more of an active recruitment, which really sometimes doesn't cost as much money as much as I would say, word of mouth and peer-to-peer discussions, and just going out on social media and saying, do a blitz about the great joy of being a teacher or something like that.
So I think, first of all, Commissioner, I agree 100% with you. That's number one. Number two, if you want me to come speak with a group of young people, I'm happy to do that. I think there's a power to individual human beings connecting with others,
exactly,
with adults saying to kids, you know what, I see you as a potential teacher. A number of us back in the day were told by somebody, you aren't now, but you can be at some point in your lives. And that affected the way we thought about ourselves. And we now need to pay that forward and pour into our young people who are coming up, whatever they look like, whoever they are, in whatever communities, all 830 districts across the state. It doesn't matter. There's a real value to that. Some of it is cultural. That is to say, some cultures are less interested in, for whatever reason, historically, in teaching. The reality is that some have been in teaching and have moved away from teaching over a period of generations, and we need to bring them back into teaching. Our kids need to see themselves in the teaching profession. It's enormously helpful. And so I'm happy to go anywhere to drumbeat around this theme. I'm not a big believer in commercials. A compelling video on social media from someone who looks like the children or the support staff or the community members, or yes, I buy that. But in general, I think it's those one-on-one connections. It's somebody saying, I can see you as, and that light bulb going on in your head saying, really, you can see me as a teacher? Me? I'm cutting up in your class. I know you're cutting up, but you're funny, you're smart. And when you focus, you are right on in your thinking, in your writing, and you'd be a great teacher, particularly for kids who are like you and who aren't the easiest to deal with. And light bulb goes on, and all of a sudden, this is a kid who's reflecting about school and him or herself differently.
Thank you, Dr. Rice. I will be taking up your offer perhaps later in the school year. And I agree with Commissioner Combs as well. We definitely need the monetary commitment, and then we can do some out-of-the-box thinking about non-traditional ways as well while we wait for the funding. I agree with him 100%. There is no greater need to get equity without actually looking at the teachers who don't look like them. And I experienced this firsthand when I went down to Detroit to be a reading buddy. The first question the kids were asking is, who are you? Where are you from? The kids were so excited to see someone who doesn't look like them. And then we ended up talking about where I was from. And, are there still elephants and tigers roaming the streets in India? It was a fascinating discussion with the children. So I know how great it is to have diversity, even in everyday acquaintances, and especially in a classroom. I cannot tell you how important your report and your recommendations are. Thank you so much, Dr. Rice.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Commissioner.
Thank you.
This is Chair Clayton again. Commissioner Kosaraji, you just said something that made me think. Besides the Michigan Civil Rights Commission, we also have the other, state ethnic commissions. And maybe we need to, bring them into this conversation as well, because when you're talking about other people for Dr. Rice to speak to and share this information, I think that would be a natural place for us to also share this information. So let's talk about maybe the Education Equity Committee. We can have a meeting. We can talk about how we can make sure that they have this information that we're getting tonight as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Does that work for you, Dr. Rice?
Yes, ma'am. This is a good meeting from my vantage point.
Good. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. I know that you had another commitment for this evening, and we've only kept you 10 minutes longer than we said we would. So thank you very, very much. Appreciate you always.
Thank you. Have a great day. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. This is Chair Clayton again speaking. And next, we are going to have Alfredo Hernandez, who is the Michigan Department of Civil Rights Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. He is going to walk us through the next two recommendations that are ready for action. Once the council reviewed the recommendations in our education equity report, the two recommendations actually morphed into the Education Equity Resource Guide, which is a template for developing a school equity plan. The original recommendations were to develop a statewide educational equity plan to enhance policies, accountability, and opportunities for all, using a holistic approach to inform the Michigan Department of Civil Rights, the State Department of Education, and schools statewide, and also to encourage schools across the state to create local school equity plans and contribute information and resources to encourage and support equitable practices and opportunities for school. Director Hernandez, I'm going to turn the floor over to you so you can tell us what all that means and how we came up with the excellent document that we now have.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Commission, for allowing the space for us to speak a little bit about this. I'm not sure if I'll be able to pull up the PowerPoint presentation here. Let me see if I don't think I'm able to, so.
Excuse me, 1 second. I believe someone else should be doing, there you go. It should be coming up for you. Okay.
Perfect, thank you. So if we could just go ahead and go to slide 3, please. Okay, so thank you. So as you mentioned, Madam Chair, and as we already know here, the Civil Rights Commission put together the Education Equity Report. And from that report, the Council for Government and Education on Equity and Inclusion began to work on the recommendations that you just highlighted. Specifically in terms of the Education Equity Report that was put together by the Council with the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. Again, we were focusing on how can we tangibly make these recommendations come to life. So looking at developing a statewide education equity plan, but also looking at encouraging schools across the state to create their own local school equity plan. This is specifically what led us to get together from the beginning of 2021 and begin to meet every month to create this resource guide. If we could go to the next slide, please. So basically what happened from here is we met a number of times from 2021, beginning in January. And after about half a year, we were able to actually develop this resource guide to developing a school equity plan based on the recommendations from the Michigan Civil Rights Commission Education Equity Report. Why is there a need for a school equity plan? There are a number of reasons why, but the first one that I can highlight is it is important to think about the ways in which we can operationalize equity. We often believe that if we show up with good intentions and we're going to do the best we can, that often that's going to lead to great outcomes. But the fact is that we know is that if we're not organized, if we're not thinking strategically as to how to dismantle barriers to inclusion, that we're going to end up with a number of unintended outcomes. So the purpose of this resource guide, based on the recommendations of the report, is to provide a level of planning for schools across the state to engage in this work. Next slide, please. So there are some key components to this presentation, some key components of the resource guide, excuse me. And some of the key components are making sure that we understand how to establish a vision and a mission that is centered on diverse, equitable, and inclusive outcomes and opportunities. Once we're able to establish that vision, then we should also think of ways in which we could create and sustain outcomes that we would like to see. So what are the specific goals that we would like to see in terms of DEI, but also how are we going to measure, monitor, and evaluate those outcomes? Having specific goals, but also having an understanding of how we're going to measure, monitor, and evaluate that progress. It's an important piece of this work, and this is something that you will find in the resource guide. In terms of terms and definitions, one of the things that we need to consider is that having a common language around DEI topics help us understand how to get through the work of creating and sustaining diverse, equitable, and inclusive outcomes. So terms and definitions allow us to develop a common language where we understand one another, and we also mitigate misconceptions and misunderstandings. So for example, when we think about equity and equality, they're not one and the same. When we think about diversity and inclusion, they're not one and the same. And having an understanding of that, but also recognizing that one is not a natural consequence of the other, are all part of this process. In this resource guide, you'll also find information related to building or creating or sustaining the organizational structure that is important to do this work, right? So having a designated person to oversee the work and understanding what the work entails in terms of at an institutional level, increase racial consciousness and cultural competency and cultural intelligence, and understand what is all that. But also to recognize that in the field of education, we are talking about many folks being highly educated, and to recognize that having master's degrees and PhDs does not quite exactly makes us cultural competent, racially conscious, or culturally intelligent. So part of what we're doing with this toolkit that was put together by the council as this resource guide is to help folks understand not only how to get started, but what are some of the resources that are available to us. So throughout this whole document, whether it's you're looking at how to develop your own vision and mission, whether or not you're looking at goals and outcomes, terms and definitions, or the organizational structure as a whole, each one of those areas, each one of those key parts has tons of resources that come from national level expertise as well as in Michigan, in our own state. And what we're doing is just basically providing an opportunity for folks across the state to see this toolkit, to see this resource guide, and to combine it with their own efforts in their own sectors to expand their own initiatives, to operationalize equity, and to ensure that we're doing everything we can to create and sustain equitable access and opportunities for all students throughout the state. Next slide, please. Another aspect that comes from the work of the Civil Rights Commission in terms of the report, the Education Equity Report, and its recommendations was the work of providing year-round cultural competency, race and equity education, advisement, and coaching. I'm very excited to say that the Michigan Department of Civil Rights has been working actively in this arena for a number of years now. The Department of Civil Rights was the first state agency to create an equity office at the state level. And we are actively working in collaboration with the governor's office and equity officers across the state to ensure that we're doing everything we can to create and sustain equitable access and opportunities for folks across the state, across state agencies, but also in terms of our collaboration with the Council for Government and Education on Equity and Inclusion. We have been actively working on strategies to increase knowledge and awareness. So if we go to the next slide, you could see that the Equity Office and the Michigan Department of Civil Rights has a number of units and divisions that are actively working on educating folks, from the deaf, blind, and hard of hearing division to community engagement to the Equity Office. And we're working actively with local government and education sectors to help them understand the impact of implicit bias in the decision-making and how we could more strategically mitigate and minimize unintended outcomes and unintended consequences that often are deeply rooted in unconscious bias, as well as historical and cultural ways in which we have learned to misunderstand one another, including ourselves. So we're very excited to continue to be a part of this process that very much so connects with the recommendations of the Civil Rights Commission report in terms of providing cultural competency training across the state. Next slide, please. Another area very much so connected to the recommendations in the Michigan Civil Rights Commission Education Equity Report is the need to recognize that whenever we're working in this area of DEI, specifically if it's related to education, that we need to bring the youth voices into the conversation. Obviously, most of us as adults, as educated folks, believe that we understand most things and that we don't exactly need to quite consult with the youth. I mean, what do they know, right? Well, of course not. That's not how we think. As a matter of fact, is the opposite. And because of that mindset, because we recognize that youth voices can increase the innovation, the creativity, the broader perspectives that reside in that youth and the diversity of that youth, is that the Michigan Civil Rights Commission not only made this a priority in the recommendations, but the Council for Government and Education also made it a priority. So the need to create a multicultural student-led component in relation to increasing access and mitigating barriers to education across the state, it's another important component of that. And I would like to go to the next slide, which is going to be presented by my colleague Anthony Lewis from Community Engagement.
This is Chair Clayton speaking. Sean, can you stop the screen share for a minute? I just want to do a quick introduction for Mr. Lewis and Ms. Labra. Oh, okay. Thank you. This is Chair Clayton again speaking, just to let everyone kind of know where we are. Mr. Hernandez also covered one of the recommendations, which is to provide year-round cultural competency, race, and equity education, advice, and coaching. The other item that he just referenced was to create a multicultural student-led component, and that is going to be brought to us by Mr. Anthony Lewis, who is the MDCR Director of Business and Community Affairs, and also for the Michigan Civil Rights Youth Academy. He is joined by Ms. Jalissa Labra, who attends Mercy High School. She's a member of the Michigan Department of Civil Rights Youth Academy and participated in this past summer's University of Michigan Fellowship Program. Jalissa is very involved in her student government and social justice issues, especially public policy issues related to civil rights. She also is a student leader for the Congress of Communities Youth Organization in Detroit. I'm not quite sure when she has time to be a teenager, but as Mr. Hernandez said, hers is definitely the type of youth voice that we need to have in our conversations when we're talking about education equity in Michigan, especially in our K through 12 school system. So if we can have Mr. Lewis and Ms. Labra come on and they can give their presentation.
Well, thank you, Chair Clayton, and thank you for this opportunity to address the commission. I will be brief because I want to make sure Jalissa has plenty of time. Well, yes, when we were discussing as far as the recommendations for the education equity report, obviously having youth voice was very important, and to that end, we one of the things that we did was we leveraged some of our existing programming and our existing partnerships, and that is with our University of Michigan Summer Youth Dialogues program, which Jalissa was a part of this past summer, and she'll kind of discuss a little bit of that, but also leveraging our University of Michigan Fellows, which comes from that program, also our Western Michigan University Fellows, and they have been currently meeting regularly. Our Western Michigan University Fellows meet Sundays at 2 p.m., so we are working towards that, and then we also agreed to participate as that, in our council. She will be one of our student-led leaders to the Equity Council. So we are happy and we are proud to have Jalissa, and I'd like to turn it over to Jalissa now.
Hi everyone, my name is Jalissa Labra. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm 17. I'm from Southwest Detroit. As Anthony said, I participated in the youth dialogue on race and ethnicity and have now become a social justice fellow and do other social justice groups such as COC, as that was mentioned. So today I wanted to talk about two main topics, which is my experience with SYD and what has come up and talk in the fellows and maybe a future project. So regarding SYD, I personally think it was an amazing experience. I really wish everyone could just take the program and just experience what I did. I really learned about what other races and ethnicities experience when it comes to racism and prejudice in their own communities. I think it also opened my eyes about how unique and distinct people are. There are so many amazing people with different ideas about how to start change. Change is, I think, one of the biggest things that needs to be emphasized, especially this year and for the past year. I think it needs to start now. And it has really come up about how we can make it happen. And it was just amazing. So for my second point, so in the fellows, we have talked a lot about education. It has been a big subject of talk, and it has come up in many different ways. So what I will be talking about, it would be some of my thoughts and on what some of the fellows think needs changing regarding education. So the first point that I have is advocate for equitable funding. Money matters in education, unfortunately, but the United States school funding system remains unequitable, disproportionately shortchanging for BIPOC students, Black, Indigenous, and other non-Black students of color attend schools that are statistically more likely to be undersourced and outdated. This is something that has come up in every single talk the fellows have come up with, especially with our project that we're doing, and it's something I think we all as a whole want to continue with. And then the second point would be school needs a comprehensive model that addresses race in the curriculum. I think the way a lot of history classes are taught are definitely whitewashed, and the history of people of color isn't thoroughly taught or not taught at all. I also think that if you're going into healthcare and any form of profession that deals with many different people, different backgrounds, there needs to be a required class about race and ethnicity and prejudice. There should never, ever, in any circumstance, be a racist doctor, lawyer, or teacher. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jalissa, very much. I don't know if any commissioners had any questions or comments for either Mr. Hernandez, Mr. Lewis, or Ms. Labra. Any questions or comments from anyone? Do I see any hands raised?
I would just say, Miss Labra, thank you so much for joining us today. I am so impressed by you, and I'm so excited to see what the future holds for you. Thank you so much for presenting today. Your words resonate with me, and I'm sure with others on this commission. So thank you very much. And for your courage to step up and say what you said. I think that is well exhibited, well said, and very, very impressed by you.
Thank you. Yes, echoing what Commissioner Alsan said. And I just also want to lift up Anthony Lewis, because I think we first learned about the Youth Academy. You had some other students who were with us last November, and we were very impressed with those students and the work that you're doing with them, the work that you've done this summer, how you're expanding the Youth Academy, giving more opportunity to students like Ms. Labra. And what I think it's important is that you provide this opportunity, this platform for the students to meet, to talk, to express themselves across the state. While we know that she's from Southwest Detroit, we know how far your reach goes on the west side and the other sides of the state. So I just want to thank you for the work that you are doing. And whenever we say, Tony, we need somebody to be a youth voice and to talk to us, you always just do an outstanding job with getting someone with us. So glad to have you all here, and thank you. Did anyone have any questions for Mr.
Yes.
Oh, yes, Commissioner Flower. Yes, I didn't see your hand. Yes.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to commend Ms. Labra for your comments. I know it takes a lot of courage and confidence to be able to present to a group such as ours. One of the reasons why we do this work and why we're so focused is for the future. And I think it's so imperative that we listen to you and that we bring your input in. And that is what Anthony Lewis is bringing to us, as well as making certain that we don't forget the future. And it would have been amazing for me to have a teacher that looked like me, that spoke Spanish when she, as her first language, but I never had that opportunity. And so I'm really hoping that that really resonates across the state as well. So thank you again.
Thank you. And I just want to make sure that, this is Chair Clayton speaking again, that Mr. Hernandez covered everything that he wanted to cover. I see that he has been moved out, but I want to make sure that all of the points that he wanted to cover in the recommendations have been covered before we took a vote. So can we have him brought back in very quickly, please? I just want to make sure. And then I don't know if any commissioners had any questions for him. Any questions for Mr. Hernandez as it relates to the resource guide? None from anyone. Okay. Mr. Hernandez, were you finished with was there any more that you wanted to add regarding the 3 recommendations you were covering, or did you cover everything before we had this youth voice piece?
No, Madam Chair, I believe we covered everything, and I just want to thank the commission for the opportunity to work on the recommendations from the Education Equity Report. The council, as I mentioned before, was very committed to developing this resource guide. I believe the resource guide can be an incredible resource across the state to help educators focus on strategies to create and sustain more inclusive opportunities. And again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Again, thank you so much for your leadership of the council. You all did yeoman's work in about 7 months time. So thank you. And the resource guide and the press release will be available on the Department of Civil Rights and the Civil Rights Commission's website right after our meeting. I strongly urge everyone to please take a look at that document. It is a great piece of work. And what I like most about it is that it is something that can be customized to whatever the school district is, the entity is. It is more descriptive than prescriptive. So I think Alfredo, his intern this summer, they did a great job on that, along with the members of the council, who I do know some of them are joining us this evening. I saw you in the participants. So again, thank you so much for your time and commitment in creating that great piece of work. And I urge everyone to please go to our website and take a look at that at the end of the meeting. I think we are now ready to take the vote to approve this information that we received tonight as the implementation of the 6 education equity report recommendations that are ready for action. May I have a motion, please, to accept these actions? Motion has been made by Commissioner Lara.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Corvo. May I please have the clerk call the roll for this vote?
Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Commissioner Combs,
Yes.
Commissioner Corvo,
Yes.
Commissioner Ellison,
Yes.
Commissioner Gasco Bentley,
Yes.
Commissioner Kasaraju, Commissioner Kasaraju, Commissioner Lara.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
I was on mute. I'm sorry.
that's okay. And Commissioner Roberson.
Yes.
It's unanimous vote.
Thank you. That motion is passed unanimously. And again, I just want to say how proud I am of this commission, the department, the council, to get 6 out of 10 recommendations ready to go in a year's time. I think it's just phenomenal work. So again, thank you to everyone for the time and effort you put into this. Our next item are the division and other reports. We are going to hear from Director John Johnson, who is going to give the executive director report along with the legislative liaison report for this meeting. So Director Johnson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, Commission.
I think all of you received my report in your packet. I'll just go through that. There's been some changes since that was written, and I'll update you on those sections. First of all, I did start out with indicating that there's been a number of personnel changes in the department. I alluded to that at the last meeting and then announced most of those changes the next day during our agency-wide meeting. First, I want to indicate that two of our long-term employees and valuable employees are on leave. So we'll want to indicate that Lori Vinson, Director of Operations, is out on a medical leave, and Dan Levy, our General Counsel, he was switched to that position right during my reorganization, but he's also out on leave, and we'll certainly let you know when they return to the agency. Other promotions it's already been announced by Chair Clayton. And I'll indicate that again, that our Deputy Director is now Attorney Kimberly Woolridge. She was formerly the ADA Coordinator, and she became our Deputy Director effective August 8th. Also, Attorney Marcelina Trevino, who was our Director of Office of Legal Affairs, has been promoted to Director of our Enforcement Division. And I'll talk about that in a minute because that has been reorganized. We also established, under the reorganization, we also established a Department of Education. And for that, we also promoted internally Danita Wimbush. She was in our Community Engagement Department. She's now Director of our Education Division. That'll be effective December 3rd. She's also, she was promoted to our Community Engagement Division, but she's currently our Records Manager, a Record Centers Manager. So, and I'll talk about that in a minute. She's played a very crucial role in the work we had to accomplish before the end of the fiscal year. So rather than move over to her position, she stayed in her position as Record Center Manager to make sure that our goals were accomplished. And she's done a fine job along with our other staff in doing that. Again, I'll talk more about that in a minute. When we promoted Attorney Woolridge to Deputy Director, we had to fill her spot, and that's done in conjunction with the Governor's Office. I'm pleased to announce that Attorney Tyra Khan has been appointed to be the interim ADA coordinator for the state. She was an attorney. She was in our Office of Legal Affairs, working as a housing attorney. Because of Lori Vinson's leave, we had to put someone in her place. We're pleased to announce that Marlene Kane was promoted internally. Well, she's serving as interim Director of Operations. She was the manager of our housing unit. And enforcement, we currently have, just so we have different units. One specializes in housing, and then the others are currently divided up into geographical areas: Detroit, Lansing, Grand Rapids. Then because we moved Marlene up, we had to replace her as a housing manager. So we moved up Lashia Sharp, who was an investigator in that unit, up to interim housing unit manager. We had a vacancy in our Community Engagement Division, someone to cover the southeastern portion of Michigan. That position was formerly held by Linda McClenn. I think some of you may know her as Linda Thomas. She retired a while ago. We have hired promoted Tiara Yakini from an investigator to a specialist in our Community Engagement Division. And we also had a Freedom of Information Act coordinator position available, and that was given to internally to Traysona Felton, who was promoted from a housing investigator to that FOIA coordinator. So those are the promotions within the agency. We also can boast some new hires. Attorney Shanique Moss was brought over from the Office of the Governor's legal staff. She's our new director of our compliance division. And I think I might have mentioned at the last meeting that one of the mandates, or one of the goals of the commission was to reestablish the compliance division. We've done that with Attorney Moss. She'll be working on contract compliance primarily, and she'll be presenting an update to you at the November meeting on her goals in that division. Also, as legislative liaison and commission liaison, we hired Attorney Jerome Reed. Well, actually, Dr. Attorney Jerome Reed. He began 3 weeks ago. He came to us as the last 12 years as regional director for the national NAACP, but he also has been engaged in legislative advocacy and civic and civil rights work for probably more than 5 decades. Finally, we brought over Ms. Ann Holmes. We brought her in as our budget director. Mary Engelman served as our CFO. She's transitioning out of that role. We're bringing in, again, Ann Holmes part-time temporarily as our budget director. Actually, she'll be director of our budget and management services on a part-time basis, as I put out a posting on a statewide basis for a permanent budget director. So those are and I did attach to my report the latest organizational chart for the agency. And I'll just highlight a couple of things there. One is that most of the reorganization was done over in the enforcement division, where we combined the Office of Legal Affairs and the Civil Rights Operation into one division, and I made Attorney Marcelina Trevino director over that, with the anticipation of there being a more close relationship between the attorneys and investigators in investigating our cases. So they are working. She's now a direct report to our deputy director. As a matter of fact, all the departments that provide most of our customer services are now reporting to our deputy director. That would be the enforcement division, the community engagement division, and the education division. And then under that comes our division of deaf, blind, and hard of hearing, and then the ADA. All that now reports to our deputy director. So those changes were made. We also have made some other administrative changes, moving some parts of the information of the agency over into other parts of it in order to increase our efficiency. Any questions on the reorg through the chair at this time?
Director Johnson, do you want to just give your complete report and then we can do questions at the end? Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. So moving on, I do want to indicate that that our budget was passed as part of the budget negotiations. Well, not yet, with the governor and the Senate and the House. That has been approved. We remain where we are, where we have been for going into fiscal year 22. We pretty much remain the same, with an addition of an extra $250,000 one-time appropriation of $250,000 for hate outreach in regards to hate crimes and hate incidences. But in essence, our budget as approved is $17,834,000. Some of that includes federal revenues. Private revenues was actually appropriated from the state is $14,607,300. Again, that includes the one-time grant of $250 for the hate outreach. And one of the issues is that the FTEs in that budget call for 109 FTEs. That means full-time employees. But in actuality, the budget only sustains our 88 employees, and that's because as I've been told, the 109 contemplates employees, newer employees. We have a number of staff who have been with us for a while, and that of course makes us so efficient, because we do have long-term employees. But because of that, the budget only sustains the 88 employees that we have. I was sent an email by the state budget office indicates that if we filled every vacancy that we have in our org chart, we'd be $1.67 million in deficit. So, so it means that we have to be a little more creative, bringing in some additional revenue, and even we're limited with that, as a matter of fact. Internal activities. I mentioned earlier we had all agency meetings. The first one on July 27th, the second one on August 12th. We did our reorg introduction and introduced our new employees and talked about return to office. And right now we've been everything is on hold till October 31st. Is then that we can begin to begin at what we want to do in terms of returning to the office. We've talked about doing that in a very hybrid fashion. Our enforcement division, I mentioned that earlier about the reorg, but more importantly, we've been focused, job one, on getting the cases that have to be done under our EEOC contract. I mentioned part of our budget, we have federal contracts. One of them is with the EEOC. It's a contract. It requires us to do a certain number of resolutions every year. I'm pleased to say that, first of all, this is the first year that we've not had a downward modification in that contract. In other words, in the past years, there's been an agreement, and then because of the staff or a problem that we've had in actually fulfilling that contract, we've asked for a downward modification. Staff, meaning that sometimes, and as we've had experienced over the past year or so, a reduction in staff. Staff have left, there was a hiring freeze, there was a pandemic, and as a result, there's been a diminution in staff. So because of that, there's been sometimes a reduction in the goal. This year we did not. We kept the contract as it was with the goal of 668 resolutions. I'm pleased to say that as of this morning, we have 648 and we're only 20 short of the goal. The goal has to be reached by September 30th. We're confident that we will. That is cause for celebration. This was a team effort. Everybody in the agency participated in reaching this goal. Folks who were former investigators are now in other divisions, all pitched in and helped meet this goal. So it'll be cause for celebration. It's a major accomplishment for the agency in order to be able to do this and get this done without again having to seek a diminution in our contract. So we applaud the staff that participated in this. Engagement, there's been the one only incident I want to report on is in Alma, Michigan. There was the Michigan Masonic Homes that requested rezoning that area so they could sell the property to Bethany Christian Lutheran, so it'd be used as a facility to house minor refugees from Mexico and Central America. We attended several public hearings on that situation. The community, a lot of people in the community were against it. We sent a letter that was authored by attorney Marisa Gamez Garcia and attorney Tyra Khan to the Alma City Commission, advising them that their decision could not be based upon discrimination because of national origin. That information made national news. Pleased to say that they voted 4-2 to approve the rezoning. So we feel that our involvement in that was influential and resulted in a victory for those minor children being that will be housed in that facility in Alma. Unfortunately, 2 or 3 days after the victory, some citizens in Alma have started a recall petition for those city commissioners who voted for the rezoning. When I mentioned that our response to hate conference will be held on October 21st from 9 to 11 a.m. We have the lead agency on that that's being coordinated by Community Engagement Division, and we'll send you all information on that for you to participate in that Michigan Response to Hate Conference. I also already mentioned our contract compliance effort that we've reinvigorated. Just want to mention I've had some community meetings with Attorney General Dana Nessel. We've had lots of meetings on police reform. We're planning a joint town hall sometime in the near future on police reform we've agreed to co-sponsor that forum with the AG's office. I met with U.S. Representative Lisa Slotkin. We met with Governor Whitmer to discuss agency issues. Again, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives is part of that police reform discussion. And finally, we met with Professor Peter Hammer, director of the Damon J. Keith Center for Civil Rights at Wayne State Law School, to discuss collaboration and possibly establishing a clinic with Wayne State. I believe that ends my report. I do want to discuss, though, a little bit, just mention to you that we are monitoring the voting rights legislation. Again, it's pretty much static in terms of what I reported out at the last commission meeting. However, some of you also know that there's been a petition that's been initiated that includes three of those pieces of legislation. The one that does away with the ability to sign an affidavit at the poll if you don't have voter ID, the one that requires a copy of your voter ID to apply for an absentee ballot, and the one that prohibits the Secretary of State from sending out, or any clerks from sending out absentee voter applications to the voters. That petition, the language on that was approved in a preliminary fashion last week by the Board of Canvassers, with expectations that they'll receive a permanent approval to proceed later this week, if not today. I believe that ends my report, Madam Chair.
This is Chair Clayton speaking. Thank you, Director Johnson. And I would wait to do this after the fact, but our next meeting will not be until November. So I'm going to congratulate you early on your recognition that you're going to receive this coming Sunday at the NAACP Freedom Fund Award. You are going to be the W.E.B. Du Bois Freedom and Justice Awardee, Attorney John Johnson, and Director of the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. So congratulations on that honor you are going to receive on Sunday. I know some of us will actually be there at the dinner to see you recognized. So congratulations to you for that.
Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. Are there any commissioners who have any questions for Director Johnson on his report? Okay. And last thing, Director, just want to give kudos to you and the department, especially the Enforcement Division, who's been working on getting those EEOC complaints in those cases done. You all send out the crown, was it weekly, every other week? And it's just great to see that the gauge going up, that you're closer and closer to getting to the amount of cases, and that you did not have to reduce the goal this year. So that is great work for the short time that you've been in your leadership role. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, appreciate that.
You're welcome. Okay, all right.
Chair Clayton, may I?
Sorry. Oh, did you say something?
I had a question for Director.
Oh, yes, please. Go ahead, Commissioner Kasaraju.
Director Johnson, excellent report. I just had a question regarding the $250,000 one-time monies in the budget for the hate crimes. Are you working with the hate crimes unit in the AG's office for the use of that funds, or is this independent of that?
This is independent of that, but certainly, as I mentioned, we are having our Michigan Response to Hate Crime Conference later this month. So we will use that as a platform, and both U.S. attorneys are involved in that. So we'll use that as a vehicle in order to get the word out about this money that we have in order to do more outreach in the hate crime area. So we will be involving them in some way, yes.
Would you please, if you may already have, and I might have missed it, give me some, you can maybe send me an email about that conference on hate crimes in Michigan that I would like to participate in, if it is still feasible. And secondly, maybe we can talk later on also about what are some of the ideas you were thinking about for the use of these funds. We'd like to hear from your own perspectives on the utilization. I'm assuming this is just through the end of this fiscal year, but we'll have to make a pretty good use of it to make sure that it's a recurring item and not a non-recurring one-time fund.
That's true. Yes, I will. I'll loop back, let you know, Commissioner.
Thank you. This is Chair Clayton again, and Commissioner Kosaraj. It sounds like it hasn't happened yet, but I had already asked the department to reach out to you and have you be the representative for the commission for that hate crimes conference. So
I appreciate that.
we're all thinking alike. So yes, thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next, we are going to hear from Melissa Keysweeter. I actually saw her give this presentation in the meeting for the Council on Government and Education Equity. And Alfredo Hernandez suggested, which is a very good suggestion, that we actually have her give an overview of the report in our meeting. It stays in line with our education theme. It stays in line with some of what we have going on just in our state and nationally. And all commissioners should have received a copy of her presentation. And I guess we'll do the screen share for when she is ready. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Melissa. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'm going to try, is it the Anishinaabe Resource Manual Report? Was I close?
Yes, very.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. So I hope the other commissioners enjoy hearing your presentation as much as I did when we had it last month. So the floor is yours, and we can go on and pull up her presentation for the screen share.
Miigwech, Madam Chair and Commissioners, for allowing me to be here. Ani Buju, Melissa Keysweeter, Indigenous, Petoskey, Michigan, and Donjaba, Eaton Rapids, and Dinda. What I offered to you in Anishinaabe-Moan, the language of the First Peoples, is hello and greetings. My name is Melissa Keysweeter. I am from Petoskey, Michigan, and live in Eaton Rapids. As you may know, I am the Tribal Liaison and Native American Specialist for the department and have been here for almost 12 years. And prior to that, I'm very honored and blessed to be in the same space as our chairperson, Gasco Bentley, working for the Waganakising Odawa for about a decade. And as Madam Chair Clayton said, the Anishinaabe Resource Manual, and yes, she was very close in that pronunciation, is actually titled Mandonganan. The actual name for it, again, Mandonganan means to gather and share knowledge. And what I want to, I'm here to share with you all this project that comes out of the Confederation of Tribal Education Directors, otherwise known as CMTED. Again, the Confederation of Michigan Tribal Ed Directors. And this process and project is also a result and something that is accompanying the social studies standards. And then you can move to the next slide, please. So some of you may or may not recall the department's work with the social studies standards review and revision process. It actually began in 2013. It was paused and then it was revisited in 2016. When that social studies standards review and revision process was re-engaged in 2016, there were various subcommittees that were formed, including the Bias Review Committee. I was very fortunate to be co-chairing the Bias Review Committee, and that actual group was able to see all of the information and content in all aspects of the social studies standards, every grade level, history, economics, geography, civics. And we had a very strong committee in that work. And then what we know is that the standards were adopted in June of 2019. But during this process, it's certainly important to acknowledge that the absence of Native American history in social studies standards, particularly post-1900, is very significant. I mean, there's 87% of state history standards do not even mention Native American history post-1900. 27 states do not make any mention at all of a single Native American, no tribal leaders, no inventors, contributors, etc. So completely void of talking about individual Native and Indigenous peoples. Here in Michigan, prior to 2019, none of the 39 standards that at that time referenced Native American history or life did so with post-1900 content. So everything has always been pre-1900 and spoken about in a very past tense way. And the goal of the opportunities with engaging Indigenous voices and tribal communities was to change that. And MDE certainly created a process and allowed various voices and groups to participate in the process. And certainly we know that CMTED, the Confederation, as well as other very committed and engaged parties and educators spoke up during this process. And what we see now is that the adopted standards of 19 now have 51 standards referencing Native American, Indigenous, tribal communities, with 25 of those being post-1900. That's a significant improvement. By no means are the social studies standards perfect, but to see a significant improvement from the 39 standards having no mention at all to 51 total and 25 being post-1900. So there were significant efforts, again, by the Indigenous community, CMTED, and a very organized effort to talk about the content and the examples that are listed in the standards. But then the next step is, how do we support teachers in teaching these standards? What resources and materials do we provide? Next slide, please. So that is the process. The Confederation of Tribal Ed Directors, CMTED, and representatives, what makes up that organization is a representative from each tribal education department from the 12 federally recognized tribes who share geography with what we now call Michigan. That is the who. The why is to address the lack of teacher resources and the support, and to provide supporting teaching materials specific to this Indigenous content. And how did this happen? It was through collaboration, partnerships, and relationships between the tribe, state agencies, and external organizations. And what I can offer there is that CMTED, the Confederation of Michigan Tribal Ed Directors, coordinated this effort to create this manual. And the collaborations were with MSU, Northern Michigan University, MDE, and MDCR. We had 6 of us who were a part of the core development team. And we'll move to the next slide, please, and get a little bit deeper into what that looks like. So the outcome of this product is Mondonganan. Again, the translation is the gathering of information to share with people. This has a very deep meaning. There was an elder that was consulted and provided the translation on this document. And inside the document itself, there's a lot of explanation and meaning and story provided with that translation. This is a first of its kind resource. There's nothing like this that exists in the state of Michigan, I don't believe, for any subject area. So it was a first of its kind resource guide that was created and developed by CMTED, again, in collaboration with a couple of agencies and NMU and MSU. And this document is intentionally aligned with the social studies standards that were adopted in June of 19. And it contains endorsed instructional materials such as books, podcasts, videos, websites, and more, that teachers can turn to this document and find information and resources to support them and assist them in teaching to the standards specific to Indigenous content. Next slide, please. So what is the impact of this? What does it mean? This manual was created to help shift longstanding historical practices that have attempted to erase Indigenous history. This work is really a way of fulfilling the responsibility to the next 7 generations. And this work honors those who came before us, which is always important that we do. And I apologize, I did not speak to that when I gave my introduction, but I always want to say miigwech and thank you, and honor those that have taught me in this space and in the work that I do, as well as those who have come before us in preparing this kind of work related to the education, educational sovereignty, and preparing for the next 7 generations. Again, this resource manual is providing educators with ways through resources and materials. It is intended to be a lifelong process. It is also to help us increase our own knowledge so that teachers are increasing their level of knowledge, as well as being able to share this information and deliver it in the classroom. Next slide, please. So where we are hoping, and I'm not sure if there was a slide there to go to the resource manual itself. And I don't know, Sean, if you are able to, but I think, yes, please, if you are able to do that. Are we able to go to the link?
This is Sean. Melissa, can you see the manual on the screen?
No, it's frozen for me. I am seeing it. I'm just seeing the last slide.
I think, Sean, you're being asked to sort of probably stop sharing, open the manual, and then share your screen again, because it might not take it directly from here.
Okay, I'll give that a try. Thank you.
McGuetch, thank you. So what we're going to do is just take a couple of minutes. I believe that when Madam Chair Clayton also saw this presentation, we just perused it. Perfect, Sean McGuetch, so much. I really appreciate that extra effort there to bring that up. So this particular document lives at www.cmted.org, and that is the website for the Confederation of Michigan Tribal Ed Directors. It was very critical and important that the Confederation of Tribal Ed Directors was able to protect the intellectual property and able to maintain this document. So while other agencies and people are sharing it all over the state, it is housed and held within their CMTED website. And this document is about 91 pages long and has just a plethora of information in it. And it is really provided in kind of a storytelling format. It is really intended to kind of indigenize the way that teachers teach and the way that we learn and share information, and to push back to some extent on the colonizing approach to education. You can see that the front cover, this was actually done by one of our development team members, and it's kind of a piece of art, really, and there is an artist statement. And you can scroll through, Sean, if you are comfortable. I know certain pace. I'm pretty quick at being able to catch where things are, and I'll ask for you to pause if there's a reason to. But the document, again, provides some statements and some translations. It has a statement around educational sovereignty and sovereignty itself. There are also spaces in here where we provide maps and information related to where the tribes, the 12 federally recognized tribes, are located, as well as information and links to their websites. There is also a treaty map that is available. This is the author's or the artist statement that Sean is scrolling past now. That is a wonderful piece and has a lot of cultural and historical information in it. We also did an art contest for youth. And so the art that you see that is gracing these pages is all from Anishinaabe and Indigenous youth throughout the state. We have a land acknowledgement, and very specifically that piece was chosen because it is the turtle, which Michigan is where the term Michigan is derived from, and Turtle Island. So it was applicable to put this piece there with the land acknowledgement. And we have many state agencies and other organizations who provide a land acknowledgement before their meetings. You can continue, Sean McGuetch. There is also, I do want to pause here for a moment. The statement at the bottom of this, I will read this out loud if you're able to show that, Sean. So this is another artist submission. And we want to very specifically say that CMTED and the Social Studies Resource Development Subcommittee dedicate this work in the spirit of the young ancestors whose lives were taken by the residential boarding school system, which operated in the United States and Canada between 1860 and 1996. The time of this writing, 1,505 Indigenous children have been found in unmarked graves at seven residential boarding schools across the US and Canada. There are still 497 schools to be investigated. It was very important to the development team and to CMTED that this document was dedicated to the children whose lives were taken and to the survivors that experienced the boarding school system. You can continue on, Sean, thank you. There are acknowledgements. There is a letter of endorsement as well. These next couple pages are really about who participated in this process, who contributed. We recognize every youth artist, as well as the Confederation's leadership team and membership team. The letter of endorsement is a very nice piece to read as well, because it also kind of lays out the history and the reason for this work. So encourage people to take a look at that. You will also see that in several of the places, and you can feel free to keep scrolling, Sean, there are spaces where information is put with, you'll see these images. Those are actually individuals signing with their clan symbols to honor the treaties and the way that treaties had been signed in the past. Although they are continued living, breathing documents, many tribal signatories use their clan symbol. And so to honor that, you will see that many of the tribal representatives also sign with their clan symbol. You'll also see in some spaces where information is provided in a circle versus a linear format. And that is, again, to kind of honor the fact that all things are connected. No one has any space that's more important or elevated than anyone else, and also recognizes the shape of the medicine wheel. Once we get past this part, we have some information regarding language, the language pyramid, which is really to help individuals who often ask how, what words and terms are appropriate. What do we call someone? How do we identify people? And this was suggested by the Waganakising Odawa, the Little Traverse Bay Band's education department, on a language pyramid, and can be translated and modified and adapted in a lot of ways. So we encourage people to look at that. Again, the treaty maps that I mentioned earlier follow. And then we really get into the meat of the document, which are the standards and all of the resources. And it's important to know that every resource in this document has been vetted. It has been touched, seen, listened to, watched, read. And that was the whole point of this document, was that we help to provide teachers with materials that have been vetted, endorsed, and really approved by our Indigenous partners and the tribes, the tribal education departments, and CMTED itself. So feel free, Sean, to keep scrolling, and we can just look at one of the pages and wrap up here in terms of some of the information as it relates to resources. We are hoping that this is fairly easy for teachers to interact and use. Again, the document will have each individual standard that has Indigenous content as approved in 2019, along with what language and how it relates to the resource that was provided. It's broken down into grade levels, which is how the standards were done: K4, 5 through 8, and then 9 through 12. You'll see that there are live links, there are books, videos, podcasts. So for each of these, for example, where Sean is at now, there is a section in this K4 about how to compare Indigenous, the standard languages there. And then we have various teacher resources. We also denote after each resource if it's specific to the teacher or it's specific to the teacher and the student and can be used in the classroom. Again, and they are all broken down and classified based on the type of resource, and if live links are necessary, they're provided as well. When we move into, and this is the bulk of the document, probably about 60 pages, 55 pages of resources. And we really hope that teachers are going to navigate this and find the appropriate resources and materials to support them in the classroom. There's also a section towards the back of the document that provides a lot of other resources as well, including websites that are dedicated to this type of work, people to follow on social media, Twitter accounts, as well as Facebook pages, various, whether it's social media or online resources that are committed to this type of work that we felt would be important for teachers. And if they wanted to go out and explore those and follow them on their own, they could certainly do that. We also have a couple of pages at the end of the document that provide terms and concepts, just like in our DEI space and doing presentations with Alfredo. It's always important that the language is presented in a way that we have an understanding of the terms and definitions that we're using. And so the terms and definitions provided here are not just out of the Webster's Dictionary or Wikipedia or anything of that nature. The development team and CMTED actually reviewed each of these terms and provided a definition that, yes, may incorporate a standard Webster's definition, but it also is from an Indigenous perspective and from an Indigenous, a thought of how this is being viewed and applied from the Indigenous perspective. So terms and concepts towards the end of the document, as well as additional resources. So I really appreciate the opportunity to elevate the work of the Confederation of Michigan Tribal Ed Directors. And I want to say miigwech to my supervisor and the department for allowing me the space to, and the time and the resources to work on this. Again, it was a very small team. It was a 2-year in the making process. Madam Chair probably saw me get emotional in the last meeting. This has been a lot of love and a lot of time and dedication by a very small group. We started meeting pre-pandemic. And again, I think almost every Tuesday for 2 straight years to develop this the first of its kind, very unique document. And we look forward to teachers and educators using it and being able to share more about it. So again, miigwech to everyone, and thank you for letting me elevate CMTED's work and really talk about their efforts to help indigenize our classrooms.
This is Chair Clayton speaking. Thank you so much, Melissa. Thank you for taking the time to share this with us. I thought it was important. And when Alfredo brought it up saying that we should have this presentation at the commission meeting, he was 100% correct. So thank you very much for presenting to us. Are there any questions or comments from any commissioners on the information we just received? Commissioner Gaskell-Bentley.
All right. I just want to say a big miigwech to Melissa for all the work and everything that she has done in working with the things. This is a good thing, for the schools and for our Indigenous people here, to bring all this out and for them to be able to work on it. So miigwech, Melissa.
And this is Chair Clayton again speaking. I don't know if this is already on our website. If it's not, we'll make sure, working with our communications team, that we get it on our website in a place where it will be easy to find if anyone wants to look for. I know it's other places, but just want to make sure that we have it also on our website as well. So thank you very much, Melissa, again, for the presentation. Our last report under division and other reports will be from Assistant Attorney General David Cannon. And if he can be brought over and made a panelist. And while he is coming on, I just wanted to be noted that Vice Chair El Hassan had to leave, so she is gone from the meeting, but she did let me know that she was going to be leaving, so she is gone from the meeting. Assistant AG Cannon, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Clayton and Commissioners. Pleasure to be here this evening. David Cannon, Assistant Attorney General on behalf of Dana Nessel, the Michigan Attorney General. I have submitted a written report on behalf of the Attorney General, so there's most of that hasn't changed since the prior meeting, so I won't go into that absent any questions. Maybe 2 quick matters I'll just briefly mention. Fair Housing of Detroit versus Spiro. That case, an older case dating back to 2016, there were allegations that the department was pursuing, but was unable to gain service on the respondent here, and checked with the Fair Housing of Detroit, and apparently there were no new allegations. So because of the age and the fact that we couldn't get an address, that case will be closed. Then Stephen Korn versus Park Place of Northville. That case, success there, apparently non-responsive essentially to the department. And now their counsel has indicated a willingness to answer interrogatories, and those should be forthcoming. We granted them an extension to answer those, but that should be about running now. So those should be forthcoming soon. Other than that, the Roush World matter, of course, we're diligently working on that brief so that we have a quality brief submitted, of course, on behalf of the state there. That's all I have, absent any questions.
This is Chair Clayton. Thank you. Are there any questions for Assistant AG Cannon? Okay, I don't see any hands raised. Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Next, we actually have just 2 more items on the agenda. Our next item, new business, and this is a resolution in support of a safe learning environment, is a civil rights resolution. This was brought to the commission via the Education Equity Subcommittee by Commissioner Lara, and I'm going to ask her, and if we can also have Attorney Jerome Reed brought over, please, as a panelist for our next 2 items. Commissioner Lara, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Michigan Civil Rights Commission was created by the Michigan Constitution to safeguard constitutional and legal guarantees against discrimination. As the Michigan Civil Rights Commission, our duty is to ensure that all Michiganders' civil rights are respected. Our children are precious to all of us. And as parents and Michiganders, we constantly focus on the safety of all our children. One major area of focus is the safety of our children while they are at school. The Michigan Department of Education states the following regarding safe and supportive learning environments. And this is taken from their website. Quote, safe schools promote the protection of students from violence, exposure to weapons and threats, theft, bullying, and the sale or use of illegal substances on school grounds. But school safety involves much more than the physical space our students occupy. Social, emotional, and physical safety all play important roles in our students' lives and academic success, unquote. All of our students deserve a safe, healthy learning environment in all aspects. It is a civil right for all students, regardless of their capabilities, to learn in a safe, healthy environment. And we must endeavor to provide a safe learning environment in all aspects for our students. Therefore, the Michigan Civil Rights Commission is asked to approve this resolution in support of all students' civil rights and COVID-19 prevention in Michigan schools. Madam Chair, do we read the resolution?
Yes, please.
All right.
Do you want to read the resolution or did you want someone else to read it?
I can read that.
Okay.
So, resolution in support of all students' civil rights and COVID-19 prevention in Michigan schools. Whereas COVID-19 is a deadly virus with no available vaccine for students under age 12. And whereas Michigan has the 5th highest number of cumulative COVID-19 cases among children, 166,715, according to data reported by the American Academy of Pediatrics. And whereas there were 344 new outbreaks and 548 ongoing outbreaks reported on September 14th, 2021. And whereas the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services says, quote, whenever children are brought into group settings, there is a chance for diseases to spread. Students must follow state vaccine laws in order to attend school. These laws are the minimum standard to help prevent disease outbreaks in school settings, unquote. And whereas students with disabilities may be more likely to contract COVID-19 due to underlying medical conditions, inadequate health care, and systemic social inequities. And whereas the Michigan Constitution, Article 4, Section 51 states, quote, the public health and general welfare of the people of the state are hereby declared to be matters of primary public concern. The legislature shall pass suitable laws for the protection and promotion of the public health, unquote. Whereas pursuant to Section 51 of Article 51 of the State Constitution of 1963, the Department of Community Health shall continually and diligently endeavor to prevent disease, prolong life, and promote the public health through organized programs, including prevention and control of diseases, unquote. Whereas no constitutional rights are invaded by public school efforts to prevent and control diseases, as the Supreme Court of the United States opined in Jacobson v. Massachusetts, quote, even liberty itself, the greatest of all rights, is not unrestricted license to act according to one's own will. It is only freedom from restraint under conditions essential to the equal enjoyment of the same right by others. It is then liberty regulated by law, unquote. And whereas the justices in Jacobson further opined, quote, in every well-ordered society charged with the duty of conserving the safety of its members, the rights of the individual in respect of his liberty may at times, under the pressure of great dangers, be subjected to such restraint to be enforced by reasonable regulations as the safety of the general public may demand, unquote. Whereas a revised School Code Act 451 of 1976 gives Michigan schools a duty to protect students from exposure to COVID-19, including those with underlying medical conditions related to their disability. And therefore, be it resolved that the Michigan Civil Rights Commission supports best practices for the prevention of COVID-19 in Michigan public schools, and that students must be provided with an educational environment that is safe and welcoming, regardless of the student's race, ethnicity, color, national origin, religion, age, gender, gender identity, gender expression, sexual orientation, genetic information, disability, or immigration status. And be it further resolved that the Michigan Civil Rights Commission calls upon the State Board of Education, the Department of Education, the Michigan Education Association, and officials at every level of state government to join voices with the many organizations and individuals concerned about protecting Michigan students, and together we call upon all Michiganders to stand in support of all students' civil rights and COVID-19 prevention in Michigan public schools. And be it finally resolved that copies of this resolution be sent to the Honorable Governor Gretchen Whitmer, State Health and Human Services Director Elizabeth Thurtell, and Interim Chief Medical Executive Dr. Natasha Bagdasarian, September 27, 2021.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Lara. And this is Chair Clayton speaking. Are there any questions or comments for Commissioner Lara or Dr. Jerome Reed, who just have to give kudos to? This is the first resolution that he wrote for the commission. So I want to thank him for the great job he did in writing that resolution. So thank you very much. You captured the essence definitely of what Commissioner Lara was hoping. So thank you very much for your work on that. Any questions or comments from any commissioners before we move to take a vote on approving the resolution? Okay, not seeing or hearing none. Commissioner Lara, will you please make a motion to approve the resolution in support of a safe learning environment as a civil right?
I make the motion to approve the resolution.
Thank you. The resolution, okay, has been made by Commissioner Lara, supported by Commissioner Combs. Oh, got the second. Okay, so Sylvia, will you please call the roll?
Yes, I will. Commissioner Clayton?
Yes.
Commissioner Combs?
Support.
Commissioner Corval?
Yes.
Commissioner Alasan has been excused. Commissioner Gasco Bentley?
Yes.
Commissioner Caraju, sorry.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Lara?
Yes.
Commissioner Roberson. Commissioner Roberson. The motion passes.
Thank you. And let the record reflect, it looks like Commissioner Roberson has left the meeting as well.
Okay.
I don't think oh, I'm sorry, she is there. Maybe she just stepped away. She is still on the camera. Okay, so she is still here, but she may have stepped away, so she didn't participate in that, but she is still in the meeting. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Last item that we will need discussion on is Senate Bills 597 and 598. I'm going to ask Attorney Reed and Commissioner Combs to give us a quick overview and status of these Senate bills, and all commissioners should have received those bills this afternoon. So I'll turn the floor over to Commissioner Combs and Dr. Reed.
Dr. Reed. Good evening, everyone. This is Jerome Reed speaking. The bills are going to be the subject of a hearing tomorrow, again in government operations, and they would change the way that mental health is delivered across the state. Commissioner Combs?
Yes, and if I certainly want to give kudos and accolades to the chair as well as to our director and to Dr. Jerome Reed on the due diligence and the, shall we say, the extra efforts to communicate with those appropriate contacts to make certain that whatever we're doing, it's in the best interest of those individuals who, in fact, we're supposed to be representing with respect to their civil rights, their civil liberties, and the equities that are important in behavioral health and delivering healthcare services to the underserved. That said, I will make this statement and then make my final comments. The two bills that were recently introduced in the Michigan Senate are, as stated, Senate Bills 597 and Senate Bills 598, which propose to change the delivery system or the behavioral health system in the state of Michigan. The bills will impact local control and decision-making regarding serving those people with disabilities and with mental illness, and people who rely on behavioral health services through our mental health, community mental health agencies across the 83 counties in the state of Michigan, and across the several PIHPs, which stands for the prepaid inpatient healthcare organizations that funding is funneled through. What we're concerned about is that the loss of coordination from these bills over 50,000 direct care specialists in our community-based models throughout the 83 counties, and people who rely on these specialists for access to clinics and doctors, hospitals, and services will be affected, including self-determination, person-centered planning, substance abuse services, and the community integration models that have led to the state of Michigan becoming a model for the rest of the country. There are three things I'd like to submit to the commission. Today, the county community mental health partnerships can coordinate services with local hospitals, the juvenile justice system, housing, sheriffs, and local courts. The proposed bill would eliminate the coordination of these services. The Michigan Association of Counties, the Michigan Assisted Living Association, the Association for Retired Citizens is concerned that the loss of coordination could harm these vulnerable communities and the most vulnerable children and adults that we serve through our current connections and services and institutions that have been in place for decades since their invention. Today, designated community mental health agencies coordinate substance abuse services in counties and ensure those services are available for individuals with substance abuse disorders. Those particular services are slated to disappear if, in fact, the bills pass and the privatization order is placed in the hands of private for-profit health organizations. Thirdly, people with disabilities rely on local access to clinics, hospitals, and doctors' offices in getting the information and services that are necessary to maintain their good health. And lack of coordinating services through this bill would affect this care. And local control and access to these particular models that were in fact enhanced through the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, and the expansion of Medicare would in fact disappear. There are many examples of this that are currently taking place in much of the legislation that has been introduced to undermine the ACA because of those who opposed it. Because this legislation would have an impact on persons with disabilities and mental illness, we plan to monitor this legislation and work with the Whitmer administration and the legislature so they can understand our concerns. I think this is sufficient with respect to what we were trying to accomplish to educate the governor's office and give the governor the kind of insight, information, and support she needs to not only consider what these bills would do to undermine the current system that is achieving what it was designed to achieve, and it is in fact expanding services as we speak to those persons who are most vulnerable, but also the current system that would dovetail into the bill called Excellence in Mental Health. That was a bipartisan federal bill that allowed the current system to plug into expanded services to cover those who historically have been forgotten in our healthcare system. And so what am I saying? Obviously, the suggestions of the chair, the suggestions of the director, the suggestions of Dr. Reed, and the sentiments of the governor's office at this point, I agree 100% with them. We monitor, and of course, we move with those particular institutions and entities and organizations who are following the bills and attempting to dissuade the governor and or the Senate to push these bills through, bills 597 and 598, because they are not necessarily good for the future of behavior health. As a matter of fact, they're bad. And that's as much as I have to say about it. I'll limit it to that. And any questions that you want to ask me.
This is Chair Clayton speaking. Thank you very much, Commissioner Combs. Appreciate that you brought this matter before the commission and made us aware of it. Is there anything else that you needed to say on this matter?
No, I think that obviously this is going to be before us for some time. My view is that the top two civil rights issues confronting the minority community, the disability community, women, is education and healthcare. And I do think that the trajectory we were on under the Affordable Care Act and expansion of Medicaid was moving in the right direction to address many of the inequities that our communities have been suffering in these respective areas. But again, I think that we're in a good position in working with the current administration. And I think that what we should do is, as you suggested, continue to place this on the agenda so that those particular groups can come and have discussion and there can be engaged education on exactly what this legislation would do if in fact it was signed into law. And so continuing to add it to the agenda in the future, if it works that way, would be a good thing. Educating our communities and calling these groups before the commission would be a good thing, and laying out the case so that we can protect those persons in the universe of behavior health, women, minorities, those with disabilities, and so on and so forth, is of paramount importance in my view.
Commissioner Combs, is there any disclosure or further information that you need to provide on this matter?
I think that the empirical and analytical has been done. The comps are out there. The bills are transparent. The Senate bills being presented are, the health plans are not evil institutions. Their focus is just not on mission and expanding services because they're for profit. Their focus is on equity and satisfying their shareholders. And wherever they have acted to take over behavioral health services, because number one, they don't have any experience in these areas. And because number two, this is not the focus of their strategic plans, it always leaves out the most vulnerable. Why? Because the most vulnerable are funded through Medicaid, and Medicaid and Medicare are capitated. And so when those things don't meet the bottom line, they are, of course, cut off. We know this. The ones proposing the bill don't have a lot of history with respect to these kinds of sensitivities and sympathies. And so it's no surprise. I don't think that these people are out there trying to perpetrate nefarious acts against the poor, but they just are not taking these things into consideration. At the same time, it becomes incumbent upon those of us who have had to do this for the entirety of our existence to speak up and lobby for ourselves, because obviously the lobby groups have been in favor of those particular for-profit institutions who pay their lobbyists to lobby for them to expand their footprint in the marketplace. And of course, keep in mind that there's $3 billion involved here with regard to appropriations and behavioral health. So I think that for the most part, both sides have been relatively transparent about what they do and the outcomes of service delivery, the outcomes of metrics with respect to how program dollars are spent, administrative dollars are spent. All this is transparent and in all the reports that are being propagated to support both sides' position. But as you know, because of the ideological divide between both sides, some believe the government shouldn't be doing the things that it's doing. That's the problem with these bills. It is to mitigate some of those things the government is doing, and some of us believe the government should take care of the most vulnerable. That's what I would share with the commission.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Combs. And again, you mentioned transparency. I think it's very important as we are in this public setting and in this meeting, and I've said when we've had the internal meetings. So I'm going to defer to either
Dr. Reed
or Director Johnson regarding any disclosures that need to take place in the meeting. So I'm going to defer to you all to speak to that and advise Commissioner Combs if there's anything else that he needs to add to his comments.
This is Jerome Reed speaking to the commission through the chair. Yes, I believe that I'd like to thank Commissioner Combs for sharing your insight. I know that you've been involved with community mental health as a provider, as a practitioner for a number of years. And you have that frontline grassroots perspective on how these services are actually delivered and what the needs are in the community. And I would hope that you would even elaborate somewhat on your firsthand experience in helping to deliver these services to the marginalized communities that we represent.
Well, if you're asking me to elaborate, we've been at it for 32 years. We work in a space known as specialized residential care services for persons with developmental disabilities, serving adults with mild, moderate, severe, and profound mental retardation. We have about 30 facilities. We've been as high as 36 facilities, serve about 150 patients in 5 counties. And our experience has been that the CMHs, as they have evolved over time from the Engler days of closing the Lafayette Clinic until today, that these models that have been choreographed, organized, and structured have only improved over time. And it just happened that when Stacey and Harvey Hollins and Governor Snyder were in office, that the partnership that was organized between Governor Snyder, or that was put together by Governor Snyder and Barack Obama, worked out because of the need to expand Medicaid and Medicaid services in Michigan to cover 455,000 of those persons, primarily in the minority tracts and the urban tracts that have been left out of the equation of service delivery. And so there had been expansion. There was expansion through the ACA. There was expanded coverage. There was the expansion of assessments. There was the expansion of funding. And the program dollars that, in fact, we were receiving prior to the Snyder years were increased once Medicaid expansion took place. Substance abuse became a part of that equation. And obviously, you all know about the Oxycontin outbreak and the addictions that took place, and all of this came into the equation. All of these things have been extraordinarily good for behavior health. But there was an attempt to push Bill 298 or Act 298, I'm sorry, saying that they felt those who believe in less government involvement in providing social services in our communities that there was a layer of administration that was wasting program dollars. And no doubt this was because many were saying that there were a few of the CMHs across the counties, 83 counties in the state of Michigan, that had a relatively sizable fund balances. And so they thought that if they created competition by expanding privatization, that it would force these dollars into programming. And we were sold the bill that, in fact, it would be beneficial for those of us that are on the front line, but we don't see that because, as Dr. Cornell West said, none of these people that they're proposing to provide behavioral health services have any track record of doing anything for the poor, nor do they have any experience in providing behavioral health services. So that said, we're not indicting anyone. We're simply saying our experience is, and our thoughts are that the current model has been a model for the country. The model that is being proposed through the bills that is currently set up in Iowa has been a failure. And so we don't see how program dollars are going to be expanded. We don't see how administrative dollars are going to be shifted toward program services on the front line, where we provide services and supports for the 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, 365-day a year care for the people that we serve. And as a frontline person, I would say that, again, the current models have been working very well for us, and we have met all of the CARF, which stands for the Commission for the Accreditation or Rehabilitation of Facilities Guidelines, all JACO guidelines, and even CARF and JACO, particularly CARF. CARF is not in support of this approach of privatizing behavioral health with for-profit health plans. Does that make sense?
Thank you again. Thank you again, Commissioner. And thank you for disclosing that, as a provider, this would impact what you do as well. And I think that that's a perspective that we need to share with the committee when they meet, as well as with all of the agencies involved in this legislation, to try to come up with a workable solution that'll meet the needs of the community. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Doctor.
This is Chair Clayton speaking again. Thank you, Commissioner Combs. Thank you, Dr. Reed. And as was stated, Dr. Reed, in his capacity as legislative liaison for the Michigan Department of Civil Rights, will continue to monitor this, work with the Whitmer administration, work with our state legislature, and then if there is a need for this to come back before the commission, he will let us know if there's any further action that needs to be taken. I just felt it was important to get on the record how this came to the commission, and Bishop Combs took care of that, so we are all good.
Yes,
any
ma'am.
questions or comments from anyone before we move on and get our meeting wrapped up shortly? Questions, comments? Okay, none. Thank you. So again, Attorney Reed, Dr. Reed, thank you very much. Good work. Thank you. Okay. The last item under under new business is all commissioners have received the proposed dates for the November 22 meeting. I'm sorry, not November, the 2022 meeting schedule. We ask that you just take a look at those dates, compare them on your calendar. We will vote on those at our November meeting. If there's anything that you see that does not work, if you could please let Sean Sanford know ahead of time, so then she can work to find other dates. So then when we get to the meeting in November, we'll have a schedule that everyone will be able to agree upon.
Excuse me.
Yes, Commissioner
Chair,
Lowry, yes, ma'am.
Yes, Chair Clayton. Right now, is it are you proposing that we start meeting in person sometime next year? And if so, it would be good to have the proposed locations of each of the meetings also.
So right now, we don't know. It'll depend on what is happening with the health departments and what measures they have in place, because right now we are meeting under, and Director Johnson, please chime in if I get this wrong, but we are meeting under the emergency order of the Wayne County Health Department, which covers public meetings or meetings under the Open Meetings Act that are held in the city of Detroit, aside from city of Detroit government meetings. So right now that is in effect until December 31st of 2021. Do not know what will happen after that. Previously though, when we were meeting in person, at the time, we set the meeting dates. We did not set the location because sometimes our meeting location would be determined by what's happening in a certain part of the state. So, but we would make sure that at least 2 meetings in advance, especially if it involved travel, where those meetings were going to take place, that the commissioners knew, but it was not past practice to identify the locations at the November meeting for the upcoming year.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, we are now at closing comments for commissioners, and I am going to go first, and I'm just going to give a very special shout out to Michael Joseph, who was with us the entire meeting from the Black Student Union at Wayne State. So Michael, I see you in there holding, hanging in and holding it down. So thank you very much for staying with us the entire meeting. Are there any other closing comments from any commissioners? Please raise your hand if you have any closing comments from anyone. Commissioner Combs?
Kudos to John Johnson for receiving, as you already have indicated, the W.E.B. Du Bois Award. And we salute him in his achievements, and we honor him as a commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Combs. Commissioner Lara?
Yes, I would like to also thank Dr. Reed for his baptism by fire, shall we say, to immediately be thrust into an interesting project and resolution. So he's been excellent in his communications. So thank you, Director Johnson, for bringing him on board.
Thank you. And I'm going to go to Commissioner Roberson in a moment. I saw her with her hand raised, but just want to say that, we want everyone to recognize we have 2 people here in our meeting, Bethany James, who I referenced earlier today, who I'm accustomed to seeing on TV mostly. So good to see her here in our meeting. And then also Commissioner Roberson, because I don't know how many of you all, watch her, but she is somewhat of a regular on Flashpoint with Devin Skillion, and she is always representing the commission well. So just saw you not too long ago. So Commissioner Roberson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to say though that we had some excellent presentations tonight. And I also wanted to apologize for calling you not Madam Chair when I was referring to you earlier. So great meeting. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay. All righty. So that being said, we are now moving to adjournment, and our final agenda item is adjournment for this meeting. Our next regular meeting will convene virtually on Monday, November 22nd at 5 p.m. It will include an update on Director Johnson's 6-month plan. And as we all have seen, he has hit the ground running. I already know some of the things he's accomplished already, so look forward to hearing that update from him. We also will hear reports from our new legislative and commission liaison, Attorney Dr. Jerome Reed, and our new contract compliance director. And I had a blank. I was going to fill in her name. Can someone, Director Johnson?
Shanique Moss.
Yes, the Shanique Moss. She came to us from the governor's office, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Attorney Shanique Moss, is that correct?
That's correct.
Attorney Shanique Moss, yes, will be giving us an update on contract compliance. And again, Director Johnson, a couple more kudos to you for getting us finally. We've had contract compliance on the commission agenda to get that as one of our priorities for 2 years. So thank you very much for making that happen.
Right.
All right. So we'll see everyone then. So may I please have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
The motion has been made by Commissioner Combs. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, seconded by Commissioner Roberson. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously, and please let it be shown that the Michigan Civil Rights Commission meeting adjourned at 7:24 p.m. Everyone have a good, safe evening, and we'll see you in November. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.